There is a question from it's question to Taj, sorry, Azhar, and obviously Taj, you can also add to that. There's a question from Amber Khan. Can you please discuss scholarship options for Indian students wanting to pursue PhDs in US? So can you throw some light on this, Azhar? And Taj, please come in if you feel, I mean, if you think that you can add something to it.
Okay, so I'll talk about like the in economics field,
Mm-hmm.
the admission process is more or less the same.
Mm-hmm.
But since I'm in economics field, I'll talk about how the scholarship things works in the US.
Okay.
So if you're applying for, let's say, PhD, you can be almost certain you'll get. So they in US they call it funding. They don't call it scholarship.
Okay.
So if you apply for PhD, it can be almost certain that they will offer you funding from the universities,
Okay.
which is usually
It is
fully
guaranteed.
covered.
So you get a PhD, you get a offer to do PhD, and you are guaranteed of
It's
funding.
not guaranteed for all the students. You know, in a PhD cohort, let's say there are 15 students, there will be one or two odd students who will come here as self-funded.
Okay.
It's not very unusual, but usually people from India, and it's very difficult to finance your PhD. It's
Right.
5 years old, right?
Right.
So it's for people like us who come from India, it's literally impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you get admission with no funding, we just don't go there.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I can
So
imagine. It's a very
yes,
expensive thing, especially
it's
if you
very
are from
expensive.
India or other developing countries.
Yes, and the good thing about applying to US universities is you don't have to apply for funding separately.
Okay.
So once you fill up the form, you just show your intention that you are also applying for funding. That's good enough. So they will consider you by default. They will consider you for funding also.
Okay, I see. But that's not the case in Europe, by the way, right? Because not
I
everyone
don't
is
think that's the
eligible
case
for a
in Europe.
PhD.
The process is a little bit different in
Right.
Europe. But
Because
in the
in
US,
Europe,
all the universities they have same uniform application and funding opportunities throughout
is
all
it
the universities.
across disciplines or is just for economics?
I think it should be applicable to all the other disciplines also,
And
not
for how
only
many
in
years you are given this scholarship? Is it 5 years or 6 years?
it's usually guaranteed for 5 years. In some universities, it's guaranteed for 4 years. But you once you finish 4 years, you usually get another years of funding.
Extended.
That's not a big.
Okay. But is it sufficient to survive in the US? And our second question is does it vary with respect to university and the place where the university is located? Because I know that if, for example, you are in Newark University, right? It's quite expensive to be in Newark compared to say you are in Detroit and other places, interior places in the US.
Yes, exactly. So I think Taz also mentioned about this. So I think the real income in all the universities, I don't think they're statistically different.
Mm-hmm.
The nominal value might be a little bit different. So if you get into a university, let's say in the New York, obviously they'll pay you higher stipend.
Okay.
But if you get an admission in a small college town, then you'll be paid less. But your real income will be higher because the cost of living and all. So I think people should not be worried about this. Okay, this university is paying a little bit higher. Actually, that might not be higher in real terms.
Okay.
So I think more or less all the universities, depending on the place, in terms of real income, almost all the universities have the same income.
Okay, if I may ask you, I don't know if you feel free to avoid this question if you want to. What is the amount normally you get? Don't ask me my salary. Huh?
Okay.
I am allowed to ask.
So in US university, usually, they will pay stipend for you for 9 months.
Okay.
But there are some universities they will pay you for 12 months stipend also.
Okay.
But even if you, let's say, get 9 months of stipend, usually they will pay you enough if you are single. Let's say you are single, you are not married. They will pay you enough for 9 months so that you'll be able to save a few $1,000s so that you can survive the summer months also.
Oh, okay.
And usually you might get funding in summer also, but that's usually not guaranteed. 9 months is guaranteed. That's the usual norm in the US.
Okay. But are there also other funding sources beside what your university pays you? Because I know in UK you have many scholarships. You can have multiple scholarships, and you can earn more
Okay.
money from these scholarships, right? Like let's say you're doing PhD in Cambridge or Oxford, you have India scholarship, right? They
Okay.
have scholarship only for Indian students. There is one such scholarship I know in UK universities. Commonwealth scholarships, right? There's so many,
Okay.
right, such scholarships.
Mhm.
Are there also such things in US?
So if you come with a scholarship, let's say from India, let's say from Indian government or any organization, then the university will not pay you.
Okay. So
So
you
you'll
cannot
get
have
only
dual
one.
scholarship, right? More than one at the same
Yeah,
time.
you'll not get more than one scholarship.
Okay.
It's only one you will get, and you cannot work more. So we have a rule that we cannot work more than 20 hours a week,
Okay.
and we cannot work outside the campus. So
Mm-hmm.
there are limitations. And even if you can work, the
Mm-hmm.
PhD program is so rigorous
Mm-hmm.
that you will not have enough time to work beyond your required number of hours.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Khan?
Yes, Pani, like this slide, like I will put my like
Mm-hmm.
thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think like for PhD program, it is not a much of a concern for like funding. There's always a like 99% of students that you will get funding in PhD program.
Mm-hmm.
It is like highly rare, impossible. Like you will see people that some universities are not paying it, but almost in US, every PhD program is funded. Because like they need to hire as a TA or RA, right?
Right.
So I think it's funded. For masters, even in my university, I can talk on my behalf of my university. It's almost funded for master students also. In engineering, it's full funded.
Right.
They're getting good enough money. In other disciplines like psychology, English, economics, they get kind of partial funding, like as a team. But yeah, that is like not very good amount to cover the 12 months. But a lot of people are surviving on this.
Okay.
So it's better than nothing, right? It is good amount of money. You can survive on that. And like in New York, the amount is higher than Oklahoma. So my concern is like, my point is like they give money on the basis of cost of living expenses.
Okay.
This is the benchmark they have set. And the amount is good enough to cover your 12 months like expenditure. And like let me tell you, like Ajar has a lot of saving, I'm telling you. And if you talk to Ajar, he has like thousands of dollars of savings in his account.
Okay.
And investing in share market. So he's like a rich guy.
Okay. Now this is good
Yeah.
for our viewers because there is always this apprehension that you may not be able to fund yourself if you want to do PhD abroad, because obviously it takes 5-6 years, and then the cost of living is quite high in the US. But it's good to know that it's almost always funded.
But one thing to understand, you will not get like funding in the undergrads.
Okay.
Mostly university in the US, they run on undergrad tuitions and other fees.
Okay.
So you will not get. It's like very rare that people get some scholarship, additional scholarship. You will not get from the department. So it's very rare. So yeah, undergrads funding is very big concern.
But for research programs, it's always funded, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry at all. It will be fully covered.
Okay. For research program, it's always funded, right?
Most of the time, 99%. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Good answer. Thanks, both of you. One question from my side, which is that how rigorous is the program in the US, and what is the level of mathematics? I've heard from people that is pretty difficult actually, if you are not from a maths background. But can you throw some light on that? How difficult it is, and what are the areas one should focus on um, from mathematics?
Okay, so let me take that. So as I told, you need quite a bit of mathematics if you are doing PhD in economics. So mathematics, so basically you need differentiation and integration. So if you know these things, it doesn't matter which background you have, even if you don't have economics background, but if you have a transcript or mark sheet where you have taken courses like calculus, 1, 2 or whatever, or you have taken like pure maths courses, that will add to your there will be a higher probability that you will get admission.
Okay.
So people here, like the professor, they're looking for someone who is good at least in calculus, so that you'll be able to apply this mathematics in economics field. So I will say, once you start your PhD, so in every university there's something called qualifying exam. That is the toughest part.
Right.
And so depending on the university, the toughness will vary.
Right.
For example,
right.
So let's say Harvard. So even if somebody gets into Harvard for whatever reason, it will be extremely difficult for him to pass the qualifying exam. And usually this qualifying exam happens at the end of your first year. If you cannot pass, they'll throw you out of the university.
Okay. Is it more difficult for these top universities compared to say some other?
It's much more difficult in higher universities. But if you go a little bit lower universities, even there also it's difficult. They have to maintain a minimum standard, right?
Right.
But it's not as difficult as the top universities if you go to a lower universities.
Okay.
And that's the first hurdle as a PhD student. Once you qualify this exam, then you're officially called a PhD student. Otherwise, you're not sure whether you'll be in the department next year or not.
Okay. What happens if you cannot qualify?
So they'll throw you out of the universities. So basically, in some universities, they have little mercy. So they will ask you to complete your master's, and then they'll ask you to leave.
Okay. So you get a master's degree, right?
You end up getting a master's degree. So what happens, let's say after 1 year, usually there are 2 attempts, right? So for qualifying, usually in almost all the universities, they'll give you two attempts to pass the exam.
Okay.
So if you can qualify, if you cannot qualify after both the attempts, then what they will do, some universities they'll straight away say, okay, now that's it. You can leave our university.
Okay.
And in some universities, they'll ask you to stay for 1 more semester so that you can complete your masters.
Okay.
And then you'll, of course, leave.
Okay.
And this is really difficult, this qualifying exam. So if you're not good at maths, it will be really difficult to pass this qualifying exam in any of the US universities. They have minimum standards in all the universities.
Okay.